back, not that far, to the decade of my childhood and youth, the 1970s. Anyone else a child of the 70s? Both of my grandfathers died in that decade, both in their 60s, both of heart disease that led to life-ending heart attacks. Today, their heart disease would have been treated with medications and stents and maybe even open heart surgery. But none of that was done then because, you see, we could not explain the things about how the heart functions and how to fix it when it doesn't function that we can today. With the advent and coming of the internet, we now have access to information and opportunities to gain knowledge and find answers to our questions, and our ability to explain things is far greater than at any time in human history. Want to know the square root of 625,437? Well, grab a $5 calculator, push a few buttons, and you got it. Want to know what the weather is going to be tomorrow in Sydney, Australia? Or where to get the best pizza if you're in Chicago? Or how to play the harmonica? Or why ants live in colonies? Ask Siri, right? Go to the internet. It will all be answered and explained. You have a whole library now. If you've got a smartphone, you got a whole library carried around in your pocket. It has been said that knowledge is power. And indeed, knowledge that helps us understand and explain things to life is powerful and can bring us comfort. But there's a dark side to gaining knowledge. There can be a sense that with knowledge, we have gained control. And with control, we have conquered or eliminated the unexplainable. And as a result, we have forgotten how to live in the midst of the mysteries of life. In our story today, Jesus has invited Peter and James and John, three of his closest friends, to climb up the mountain with him. And once they get to the top of the mountain, there something happens which came as total surprise to Peter and James and John. From the Message, the story says, there Jesus was transfigured, transformed before their very eyes, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as the light. And just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. It all happened. It happened. All four gospel writers recorded. And in the book of 2 Peter, the story is retold again. It happened. Jesus lit up, for a lack of a better description. And with him there was Moses and Elijah, centuries dead, giants in the faith of the Israelite people, representatives of the law and the prophets, there with Jesus. Well, what in the is going on? Who can explain it? Ever had an experience you cannot explain? Before you know it, you're caught off guard. There's a lump in your throat, tears in your eyes, goosebumps on your arms, a warmth in your heart, trouble catching your breath. Not a bad experience, just unexplained. There are experiences which are difficult to put into words, aren't they? And sometimes to try and describe them does not do justice to the experience and may diminish it. It happens in places like the hospital birthing room. Whether a new baby is planned or not, what parent ever feels totally prepared for the arrival? There's always questions, aren't there? Can we do this parenting thing? Will we have enough money? Will we be able to adequately provide? Will we know what to do when they cry as infants or when they talk back as teenagers? You know, if folks waited to have children until they felt 100% prepared for parenthood, well, the human race would likely go extinct. More often than not, the pregnancy has not been planned, and there's lots of insecurities and unanswered questions and doubts and fears, and yet, when that first cry is heard, and that bundle of new life is first held, it is transformative, right? It's a moment which touches deep in the heart, and it cannot be explained. Have you ever been smitten? You know that word, smitten? I love to hear stories about how couples come together. Very few of us have stories that start with, it was a perfect match from the beginning. The high school homecoming queen marrying the captain of the football team. No, for most of us, it was more like, can you believe we came together? Here I was, 27 years old, and Jean was not 27. I had never been married, not even dated that much. She had previous marital experience on her resume, along with 2 sons, 7-year-old and a 13-year-old. My job at the time was as a chaplain intern, making less than $12,000 a year. She asked me early on in our relationship, she said, "You're a preacher. Are you sure you don't need some young virgin?" I think she thought she'd read that in the Bible somewhere. Preachers are supposed to marry young virgins. Did not make sense. Did not make sense. I think both of our families had this sort of reaction to the news of our relationship. I think they both were like, could not be explained. Could not be explained. But it was right. We knew it. Where? Here. Have you ever found yourself doing something you never dreamed you would be able to do or imagine you could do? From a website entitled Meant to Be Happy comes this story. As an infant, he was largely abandoned to a nanny. His mother, in fact, rarely saw him, and his dad almost never saw him. At 7 years old, he was sent to a boarding school where he proved to be literally the very worst in his class. His parents got reports that declared their son seems unable to learn anything. He was punished severely, once being dragged into a room and beaten until bloody for school infractions. He changed schools after his nanny discovered welts on his back from the beatings once he was home on break. He made no friends in school. His mom rarely visited him and even forgot to send him Christmas presents. His dad also failed to visit him at school ever, even when he was nearby and his son wrote letters asking him to visit. His letters were never answered. Dear Dad didn't know exactly how old his son was even. Later, as a teen, his father wouldn't let him go to the best school, saying his son would just embarrass him, that he was such a stupid boy. He just couldn't accept that kind of public humiliation from that impotent little idiot. Again, in high school, he did not fare too well. As if to underscore the fact, on parent visitation days, while other kids' parents came to see their children, his never did. The class would march out in rank order from the highest scores to the lowest. His was always dead last. His parents were embarrassed, so they stayed home. He felt the sting of it as he said very sharply, When he proudly wrote his dad telling him he had been accepted into military college, his dad finally wrote back to him saying, "You're a constant disappointment to me. Not only are you a complete failure, I see nothing ahead of you but failure. Do not write me anymore. I do not wish to hear anything from you." The same year the son graduated from military college, his dad died in lingering pain and agony after being brought home in a straitjacket. So who is this failure of a son? Who was it that went nowhere and did nothing? Who was it that was hampered by a loveless childhood with a detached mother and a verbally and emotionally abusive father who never understood or even cared for his own son? Who was this hapless son from an unhappy family? He was an artist, winning several awards for his artwork. He was a very successful author of several books, one winning him a Nobel Prize, making him a wealthy man. He was the lone voice who saw war coming ahead in the appeasement policies of Neville Chamberlain from Great Britain, brokered with Germany. And he was made Prime Minister of England twice and presided over a successful war against the spread of Nazism. His name, Sir Winston Churchill. Cannot be explained. Cannot be explained. A life transformed, transfigured. Some of you have heard the story of this place that you're at here today. Some of you may have not heard the story. When we first began talking about the possibility of doing ministry here in this spot, all we had was a building. A building that had been beautifully cared for by the members of the Orville United Methodist Church over the years, some of them here today. But about a year after the Orville Church was closed, word got out on the streets that the building was sitting empty. And just weeks after we began discussion about the possibility of what wasn't even named yet South Main, the building was broken into and vandalized, and over the next few months, at least 7 more times the building was broken into. Windows busted out, doors damaged, heating and air units inside and outside stolen, all the electrical work stripped out of the building, plumbing gone. We got the estimate for fixing all of that, just over $100,000. Would this kill the project? The United Methodist Church in South Carolina, what we call the conference, owned the building. The trustees who make decisions about properties owned by the conference are a group of people from all over the state of South Carolina, and I doubt that any of them had ever even seen this building. The insurance company would not cover the damage because the building was considered empty and abandoned. On a Sunday afternoon in February of 2014, the attorney who represents the conference in all legal matters was going to be in Anderson that day for another reason, but she asked to stop and see this building. Our district superintendent brought her here, and when I met them both out in the parking lot in the back and I introduced myself to the attorney, she said, "The trustees met on Friday for 2.5 hours about what to do with this building." I thought, here it comes. She's going to tell me that they've decided to sell it, get it off their hands. Our dream is over. She said, at the end of the meeting, they voted to spend $90,000 of the conference's money to fix the building so that this new church could start right here. Before I knew what I was doing, I had this woman in a hug. And tears were in my eyes, a lump in my throat. I could not explain why they had made this decision. But I knew then what I know now without doubt. South Main is a God thing. It is a God thing. The story from the mountaintop we read today confirms that what Jesus was and what Jesus is a God thing. We don't necessarily have to understand it or explain it, and oftentimes we can't. We only have to experience it, what it means to be loved by God. A voice was heard on the mountaintop that day which said, "This is my beloved Son." Who was that voice talking about? Jesus. Listen to him. In these times when there are so many competing voices and hard and fast opinions and wide-reaching interpretations of what God is all about and what God wants for us and what God wants from us, let's turn back to listening to Jesus. Let's listen for the words of Jesus. For it was Jesus who said, "When I was hungry, when I was thirsty, and when I was in prison, and when I was sick, you were there for me." You were there for me. Or you were not there for me. And that's what matters in the long run. Jesus said, listen to his words. Jesus said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Jesus said, when you experience ill treatment at the hands of someone else, don't pay them back. Turn the other cheek. Give to the one who's taking your shirt, your coat. And Jesus said, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and weighed down by life, and I will give you rest." Some things cannot be explained. They can only be experienced. Such as the gift that God has given to me and to you of his love that can never be taken away. And his promise that there is a place for each and every one of us in his kingdom that will never end. Why that is, how that is, what exactly do I need to do to make that happen? Nothing. For it's a God thing. Let's pray. Help us, Lord, to stop explaining things that we cannot possibly explain. And instead, help us to embrace and accept things by virtue of the fact that you are who you are, a God of never-ending love. And in the end, that's all that matters. That we know your love and that we share your